All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us today. Today is January the 9th, 2021, and this is the International Association of Woodcarvers, where carvers are helping carvers during this pandemic. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I also want to take a few minutes to thank everybody who's donated to the Buy Me a Coffee Fund. We have been able to upgrade our subscription on Zoom so that we can have more people in our meetings. So that's been beneficial. We're going to continue that fundraiser through this year, hoping that we'll have enough money to be able to continue this on past 2021. So thank you all for donating. If you want to continue to donate, be aware that when we post this on YouTube, the link will be in our YouTube post for today. You can also go out on our Instagram page in the bio and see the link there. And I'll also go out on YouTube or on Facebook and post the link there. If you can't seem to find it, contact Tom or myself and we'll be able to help you get to that point. Also wanted to say, we continue to post these videos on YouTube so that people can go out and rewatch those, or if somebody misses the meeting, you can watch them from there. Make sure when you go out on YouTube that you like and subscribe. That's only going to benefit the group as a whole, because at some point we're going to be able to put our merchandise and stuff out there. We want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to see these videos. So make sure you like and subscribe. They'll send you notifications on when we post stuff. And we appreciate you all doing that. One other thanks that I want to say thank you again to Chipping Away. They're the ones who donated the online gift cards a few weeks ago that we did the giveaway for at Christmas time. We're going to be having some more of those coming up in the future. So thank them when you contact them and you want to go out and purchase some wood carving supplies. Thank them for benefiting or donating, I guess, to this group. And make sure you go out and buy from them if you get a chance. Again, as I always do, I'll tell you about some ongoing classes that are going on. Kevin Applegate's going to be doing a class on Iron Mike, which is a little caricature that he's done. Dave Stetson has a class coming up on a dancing fiddler. Janet Cordell is going to be doing a class on a grizzly bear. Ryan Olson right now is doing an active class on carving female busts, and I think he's going to have some other classes coming up. Chris Hammock's doing a design and caricature class. It's ongoing, so if you are interested in learning how to design your own character, reach out to Chris Hammock. And Alec Lacoste is continuing to do cottonwood bark carving classes. So if you're interested in that, reach out to him. You can find all of this information on the Wood Carving Academy page, where you can also go out and subscribe and do the classes that are online there. That's woodcarvingacademy.com. Make sure you check those out. And you can see, like I said, the classes that are coming up and the information about those and who you need to contact to get signed up. Today we have a special guest with us. We have a CCA member, Mr. Wayne Laramore, that's coming to us from Sparta, Illinois. Wayne's going to talk to us about the way that he creates his caricatures, the way he goes from clay to a carving, and he's going to talk about how he paints those carvings. He paints a little different than a lot of us do, and so we brought Wayne on today to talk about that. And Wayne, we appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us. So without further ado, here is Wayne Laramore. Thanks, Wayne.
Well, welcome to Southern Illinois. I have a couple different ideas here, and if you have any questions, just kind of ask me. I'll try to do my best. Basically, what I try to do is I'll draw something up, and then I work it up in clay, and then I will seal that clay, and then sometimes I'll go ahead and make a rough out off of that. But I usually will carve it first before I have rough outs made off of it. It's just easier to do that way. Here's a good example. You've probably seen this on Facebook and stuff. This is the clown that I did up in clay. And then I'll clear coat it. And it's kind of a hard ceramic type stuff. And you could actually take this and make a rough out of it by adding a post up here. But I chose not to do that because it really tears the product up. So then I take it, that way I have this to carve with. And I can take the measurements off of the rough out, off the clay piece, and come up with this. And you get a little more movement in your product, because with the clay, you can bend the arm, move the head. And with wood, sometimes you can't do that. Then on like this guy here, this is just a simple little drawing. And all I do is take and put that on the bandsaw and saw it out. And then I come up with, and this one isn't done. This is what I came up with. And just a little bitty fat guy that I carved up with him. So that's kind of where I come up with my ideas and how I get them from clay or even a bandsaw to a finished product. So that's kind of where I come up with the idea of the thing. I try to carve things that I know. I don't do a lot of cowboy because I'm not a cowboy. I try to do things I see and people that I'm acquainted with. So is there any questions on how I create a rough out?
Hey, Wayne, you talked about a clear coat that you put on that clay. What kind of clear coat do you use? Do you know what that is?
It's called Gray's coat. I just buy it at most hardware stores, and that's what it looks like. The big secret to this, the clear coat, it doesn't take a whole lot, but the instruction says to mix it and really go by how they tell you to mix it up, because if you don't, it doesn't harden. So it tells you to, put some in a jar, measure it out, mix it together. And that seems like a lot of trouble, but if you don't do that, it doesn't harden, and then you've got a real mess, because then it's like sticky. So, follow that instructions. If you're going to make a rough out of the product, it's best to glue like the peg on the top of it and clear coat that in with it, because that makes that peg on the top a little sturdier. And I get my rough outs done by a gentleman down in Branson, Sid Crevinger. Does a great job. I've always had pretty good luck with him. Heineke is very good, but I'm in Branson enough where I don't have to pay postage. So that makes my rough outs a little cheaper for the customer and for me, because I don't have to pay that postage. It's crazy right now. So that's why I get them done down there. The only problem with Sid is he only does like 12 is the minimum you can get. I know Heineke, I think he does have an 8. I'm not sure about that. But that's kind of what I do. And the clay is something I started about 3 or 4 years ago, just trying to get my carvings with more motion and more movement. And like I say, if you haven't tried the clay, give it a shot, because it's a lot of fun.
Right.
And if you get a chance to take a class with Rich Weatherby, that's where I started. He is outstanding. You just do the clay up, you bake it, and you're ready to go.
You bake your clay before you put the finish on it, Wayne?
Yes. I take the clay and get it formed, and it is pretty sturdy without baking it. But once you bake it, it's really firm.
Mhm.
But if you're going to have a rough out made out of it, I would clear coat it. If you're not going to have rough out made it, and you're just going to, but you can actually take these and paint them up. You can gesso them and then paint them, and they almost look like a wood carving. They're very, very easy to paint. It just depends on what you want to do with it. I use them just strictly as go-bys. That way I can kind of get an idea. When I put it in the wood, I have the measurement I want, I got the movement I want, and I don't end up with a piece of wood where I don't have enough to do the arm or the leg sticking out. If you do it in clay, you can measure it and come up with it that way.
What kind of clay are you using, Wayne?
It's Sculpey.
Hmm.
And I use the kind of the fresh tone looking. They make 2 or 3 different kinds, but I use that. It kind of looks like a fresh tone, and it's just easier to work with. I think the gray, it's great color. It's a little firmer, but
Mm.
I just like this other one better. And probably just because that's what Weatherby used. That's what I started with. So that's what I stuck with.
Yeah, I took Rich Weatherby's clay class down at Renegade. Well, I guess it's been almost 2 years ago now. And yeah, he uses the pink or flesh tone Sculpey, and we baked it, but I hadn't heard about putting the uh, sealer on it you're talking about. I haven't seen that before.
And they, you know, the only reason you'd want to do that, and I do it, but the only reason you really want to do it, if you're going to put it on a duplicator machine, because even after you do this clay and you put this clear coat on and you put it on a duplicator machine, after about 2 runs, it's done. It
Yeah.
just doesn't hold up. But it will hold up for at least 1 good run.
Okay.
Any other questions about the roughouts?
Yeah, Wayne, when you have the clay model that you're not going to use to duplicate, it's for your own benefit for your carving, and now you're going to, if you will, cut out your blank. Do you just redraw it, or you got a quicker way of doing that to move it from the clay to the wood?
No, I really don't. I just basically just lay it down on a piece of wood. Or actually, I use a lot of the file folders because it's a little heavier paper. I lay that down there. Then once you get it done, you can actually take string and go from one point to another with the string, and that kind of would help too. It just depends on how elaborate you make your rough out or your clay piece.
Yeah. Okay.
But the biggest asset to it is you can kind of measure how big a piece of wood you're starting with and where you want to go into it. So you can cut, like these 2 pieces here, they're not exactly the same. The faces are a little different and stuff, but you can see that the proportions are pretty much where they hopefully should be. And to do this out of a blank piece of wood, and to get this kind of movement, you probably got to be a better carver than I am, because it's just a little harder to do. It just makes it easier to do it out of clay.
Okay. Thanks.
But I do you know, I do draw up a bunch and use rough out, bandsaw, just bandsaw it out. I really like just taking a 2-inch piece of wood and just carving something in it. It's just, I enjoy that probably more than anything. So, you guys want to talk about a little bit of painting now, or?
And one other question, Wayne. What do you do? Do you build an armature out of wire and aluminum foil before you put the clay on it?
Yes, I do. I was lucky enough, a guy gave me a bunch of the wire, but it's aluminum wire. Rich actually used electrical wire, but it's just a pretty firm. You know, you can use copper wire. It's just a little more expensive. But yeah, any kind of a wire. And you can see on this guy here, on his foot, it kind of extends up. There's a little piece of wire here that's left in there because they didn't want that to fall down when you bake it. So yeah, you build an armature out of that. And then in the middle, you put aluminum foil, and that keeps the clay from sliding down and fills up so you don't use as much clay too. So then you just bake it in the oven for about an hour and a half, and you got a finished product.
And Wayne, you said you put that little piece underneath the foot so it doesn't sag down, and then when you're baking it, do they have a tendency to drop a little bit?
When you extend something out pretty far, like if you do an arm, you make sure you use an armature in that, because it will, if you just try to make that arm out of clay, sometimes it will sag a little bit. Not always, but you know, I did it this way because, you know, it's 1 foot down, the other foot up. It would tend to maybe sway to one side. So that's what I did there. And I thought it helped.
When do you use clay to do some of your smaller 2-inch pieces that you were talking about?
No, I usually just take the drawing I've got and just go from there. And a lot of times it sounds kind of odd, but a lot of times I'll let the wood tell me where to go. Like when I start on a 2-inch piece, a lot of times I think, well, I'm gonna do this, and it just seems like I'm going someplace else with it. And that's what's kind of fun, just let it go wherever it goes.
Wayne, that aluminum wire, do you go and solder it somehow? I've never worked with aluminum wire.
No, I got some pieces of probably 2 foot long, and I just take that and it's very easy to bend, and it's very flexible. So, no, you shouldn't have to solder it together. And you can actually, inside the clay, you can actually tie, if you think you need a longer piece than you have, you can tie it together. It's not gonna hurt anything.
Okay.
Yeah, Wayne, you're known for your bright carving or your bright paintings on your carvings. Do you want to talk a little bit about your finishing work and some of the plaid work and stuff that you do on this?
Sure. I know that there was a joke the other day, somebody called me the king of plaid, but I can honestly tell you that every time I paint something, unless I'm doing it for somebody, I just try something different. I carve for the enjoyment of carving, and I paint just to be painting. I don't like to paint, but I do it. And it makes it a little more interesting. This gentleman here, the plaid on him, yellow is it doesn't take much yellow. Yellow cover is very heavy. I actually painted the plaid on first. And let me go back to how I start painting. Maybe that'd be the bad thing. I carve, and I try to carve clean, so I don't sand. And I may sand just a little bit here and there. I really don't like to sand. So I try to make clean cuts and bold cuts. And then I seal BLO, which is boiled linseed oil. I paint it on and then try to wipe off as much as I can because I don't want the excess of linseed oil on my carving. Then I'll let that dry for 24 hours or whatever, and then I'll paint. And when I paint with a lot of water. And I don't mix my paint, like I don't have a little tube and put 4 drops of this and 5 drops of this. I put my paint on a pallet and build up a little puddle of water there, and I pour the paint in there. And so when I paint, I wash it on. So it takes me 3 or 4 coats to get a color that even looks like the color I'm working for. And of course, paint will dry darker than it looks on the carving. So kind of get back to what I boiled linseed oil. Then I went on this guy here, I painted a plaid on him. And then I went over top of him with the yellow. It just it toned down the plaid. Now, if you want real bold plaid, you paint that on top of the color, the base color. And the big question I had coming back, do I use a permanent marker or do I use a paintbrush, thin lines? I really don't like to use a permanent marker. I don't say I don't, I just don't like to because they do tend to kind of mess up your carving paint-wise. So I try to paint the lines on and think ahead of which color as I add it to the carving and then go that route. But I will use a magic marker and mark my carving, and then I'll paint on top of that line a lot of the time. Because when you seal it, you have to really let that permanent marker dry a long time. Or when you spray, now I seal mine with deck. So when you spray that on there, sometimes it will make it run. So that's kind of an idea. Here's another one that I did a few years ago. And you can see the pants, how I made different colors, really not plaid, but I wanted to incorporate the colors. And as you can see, between each color, I have a line. And that kind of separates the colors, but yet really brings it out. And that just kind of, and then it, let me take that down before I break it. Just kind of, when you paint, you want to just use your imagination. Just let it go. And if you do very light washes, you can kind of build it up and see where you're at. And if you take it right out of the tube and dump it on it and paint it, you paint green, you're done with the green. You got a green paint. But if you put washes on it and you want to make it a little darker or a little lighter, it's a little easier to do it that way. And I shade everything. Like I'll put like 2 coats of wash on it, then I'll shade it with a little darker color, and then I'll sometimes put another wash on top of that so the shading kind of blends in. It just, I'm not saying that I have the right technique for painting, because I see other people do it and I love what they do. I just can't do that. And the style that I use is I don't antique. And the biggest reason I don't do that is I'm not very good at it. And every time I antique something, it looks like a coal miner. So if Chris Hammock's a great guy that does the antiquing, he's tried to show me, and I just can't get it. So I don't antique anything. If I want a little shading to it or something, I will actually take black. I don't use black and I don't use white, but I use a charcoal, and I really water that down a lot and paint the whole thing, and that'll kind of go into them little holes and crevices that you want to make a little darker. And I've done that sometimes too, but I don't antique.
Hey, Wayne, with that last pair of pants you showed on that carving just a second ago, I assume those black lines was the very last thing painted on there. You can't
Yes.
over the top of everything, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
the last thing I will do on them pants. Is I'll take, on this guy here, I use red and put those red lines in there. Here's another thing that a good while back, I was talking to a person that I really think she's a tremendous painter. And she always told me to, when you use a color, try to use it 3 different places on the painting. And why I'm going to say that is, here's a guy that all the colors are very bland, but I painted red on the top, and that's the only place that red is on that color. And what that does, that focus your eye on that top. That's the first thing you see. And that's fine if that's what you're going for. But if you're going for just a regular painting, the clown, the red nose, if that would be the only red on that carving, well, that'd be the first thing you see. So you want to kind of use your colors to bring out what you're trying to emphasize. This guy here, little brown coat, green shirt, very plain. But when you paint that tie red and yellow, that's the first thing you see. That's like, wow, look at that tie. So if that's the way you're going, hey, that's great. But if you don't want that tie to be the focus point of your painting, tone that down. So that, that's some things to think about when you paint. Any questions on that?
Going back to the line, Wayne, that you said you don't like using a pen because it might bleed or something. What
Yes.
size brush do you use to make that thin line?
It's like an ot 1 or something. It's very, very thin, and then I have 2 different ones. I have a shorter one and a long one. And if I'm doing a straight line where I can get a little paint in the brush, I'll use that longer one. But if I'm kind of in a tight area, then I'll use the shorter one. The shorter one, you can't retain the paint in the brush. But if you have that real long, thin one, kind of get your paint built up, and when I say that, when you paint the lines, you don't want that so wet that it runs. But if you got a lot of paint built up in your brush, you can just make real long, straight lines, hopefully. So that's what I do. And then on the face, the borrowed linseed oil is my face tones, my basic face tones. I don't paint like a fresh color over top of it. I let the linseed oil do that, and then I use tomato spice, burnt sienna, some different colors to highlight the areas. So my fresh tones are just basically the boiled linseed oil. And that's some of the reason I can't antique, because when you antique, the painting's got to be completely, the carving has to be completely painted, or it'll soak into the grain. So that's another reason I don't antique. But everybody has different ideas. But that's the way I paint.
Wayne, can you show us on that piece that you have there, if you were going to highlight, what areas would you highlight on a face?
Okay, the face, like if you look at my face, which, you know, this area right across here is kind of reddish, or more bold, I guess you'd say. So you want to highlight this area right across here. Then of course, you want to make above the eyes a little darker, and then up underneath the hat a little darker. A good thing to do is just kind of look at somebody and kind of squint your eyes. And that cuts down on the shadow. And then you can kind of see where that person's shadow. Another thing that's on my Santa Clauses, I'll use a lot of tomato. It's called tomato red or tomato spice. On my other figures, I'll use more burnt sienna. I'm a big burnt sienna guy. I love to shade with burnt sienna. I like to use it. But basically underneath the eyes, of course your lips, gonna have a little red in them. But the area across your nose and underneath your cheeks, that's kind of where your colors are at. To me, it is. Then I always put a little bit on top of the ears. But I want my carving to look like wood carving. I don't want them to look like wood carving just painted like ceramic. And you know, if that's what you're going for, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not the way I like to do it.
Wayne,
Anything
do
else?
you ever tint your boiled linseed oil?
Pardon me?
Do you ever tint your boiled linseed oil like with raw sienna or anything like
Yes.
that?
Yes, I do. And I wish I had a recipe for that, but I don't. I just take my linseed oil and add a little oil base burnt sienna. And, you know, I mix up about a pint at a time because I don't want a lot of linseed oil opened. If you use boiled linseed oil, there is things you have to watch out for. It will combust. If you take a rag or paper towel or something, get rid of that. Don't leave that in your shop unless you're figuring on building a new shop because it will catch fire. I've never had that experience, but I've been enough around people that have, and it is kind of a serious situation. So anyway, back to your question. I'll mix a little squirt of burnt sienna in that paint, and then I shake it up. And then right before I use it every time, I just shake it up. And that gives that boiled linseed oil a little bit of a reddish tone. That makes it a little more fresh looking. But I don't have an exact amount. I don't. I just, you know, I do it. I've done it enough to where I know about what I want to put in there. And then when I put more linseed on, sometimes I won't add burnt sienna to it because there's enough to kind of settle on the bottom. I just shake it up.
Okay,
do
thank
do
you.
that.
Hey, back on the brush, do you have a particular manufacturer that you use on a fine brush?
No, I try to buy good brushes. Like most of my brushes are $5, $6, $7, $8 a piece, and I try to take care of them, clean them out good, because the brush, like I use a lot of brushes that are wore out completely. I'll use someplace else in a carving, in a different area. So don't throw your brushes away just because they don't look so good, because you might want to kind of splash some stuff on it. But I really try to clean them out good, take care of them. Brushes last a long time. But I don't have a, you know, a lot of times it's just whatever Hobby Lobby has on sale that are good quality, that are for acrylics, because that's what I paint with, is acrylics. That's what I buy. And somebody asked about shading. This is my latest carving that I'm going to try to teach some on my seminar class. And I don't do animals, but somebody asked me if I could do them a hunting dog. So I don't know if that's what he had in mind, but this is my hunting dog. And you can see the face, the shading, and the colors. And what I did there, I started out with a very light tan, and then I burnt sienna, and then I used like a charcoal to highlight areas. And then I came back When it was completely dry, I come back with the yellow and dry brushed it. And guys, if you've not dry brushed, that really highlights any area you have, and make sure you have all your paint how you brush when you dry brush. You want it to where you don't even hardly see it. But when you spray death over top of it, it'll bring that out a little bit, and it'll highlight those areas. So when you get done with your carving, don't be afraid to take like on the blue jeans, take a little white, get it on your brush, wipe it off as much as you can, and you just kind of hit it with that dry brush. And that kind of brings out the areas that should be faded. And that's what you're looking for. Is when you paint, if you shade, you want to bring out them colors. Like if you look at this guy, the orange shirt, down in these crevices, I've made nice clean cuts down here, but I've also put shading in here so that makes him look round. And even though he's three-dimensional, you want him to look round. You want him to look, if you paint it flat, he's gonna look flat. So, any other questions about how I do the painting?
Yes, I've got a question on your caricatures. How much emphasis do you place on the eyes? Now, I've done some judging on caricatures, and one of the things that most people or a lot of people don't do is good quality eyes. So how do you do do you have some examples of some painting in your eyes?
Yes, I do. Hold on just a second. Eyes are very important because most people, whether you're carving or just looking at somebody, first thing you see is their eyes. So I try to get my eyes where they're looking someplace. And that goes back to the carving. When you carve something, you try to imagine what that person's thinking, because it's easier to carve him if you know what he's thinking or what he's doing. And I'll show you a piece in a minute where it kind of gives you an example how I've got 3 carvings on one thing and all 3 of them doing something different, and their eyes kind of tell the story. So yeah, eyes are very important. These are some things I made up for my classes, and it'd be kind of hard to tell, but basically I carved a bunch of eyes here. And best you can see, I did the white, and then I put a black line on the very top of it. And then I come back with a white again and try to get that line as thin possible. Then of course you do your round area here. You fill it with blue. You put the dot on it. And then as you come here, on this blue, and I'll show you another stick here too, if you're doing an eye, if the eye's big enough where you can do it, which it just takes a little practice, the outer part of the eye is a darker blue, lighter blue, and then right up around the black part of the pupil, it's almost white. So you want to put the blue on the palette, make it a little dark on the outside, and then right when you get up around where you're going to add that black dot at the very end, really get that blue very light color. And then you put that black dot on it, and boy, that really shoots it out. Then of course I put the little white dot to kind of show where the shadows are at. And remember, that dot goes on this side and this side. You don't put a dot here and a dot here, because the sunlight won't hit on 2 different areas. You can't see it on this stick here very well, but this middle eye here, when I do a Santa Claus, when I get the eye all done, it's dried, I put Mod Podge on it, and that makes the eye shine. I do that on Santa Clauses only because they're supposed to have that little shine to their eye. It just kind of helps them look kind of happy. So that's kind of how I do the eye. Another good idea for a wood carver, I think, carve a bunch of eyes and paint each eye a different color. And then write down the name of the color that you use. And that way, when you're doing a carving, or if somebody asks you, well, what would this look like? you have a stick or you have a go by that you can see what color that eye is. Whether you use a burnt sienna, like on the witches, I sometimes use green. I have a green on here and I can go back and say, okay, that's the green I want. And it's just a little trick that it's not very complicated, but it kind of helps you remember what colors you want to put on the eyes, because like you said, your eyes are very important. And if you do a carving and the eyes are not right, that's the first thing people's going to see. And that's the first thing they're going to criticize, because the eyes are not right. And when you make eyes, no matter how everybody makes eyes different. But biggest thing everybody does that does them well is they make them round. They're called an eyeball. So make them round, get this area here deep enough. And that way you can make the eye look in any place you want. If you don't get that deep enough, the eye will always have to look forward because it's too flat. So that, I hope that helped you with your eye question.
Yeah, but not another question, another comment is that when you're doing your painting, you're diluting your paint, so much, 1 drop of paint with maybe 15 or 20 drops of water. When you do the eyes, do you do any diluting of the paint or not?
Very good question. Very little diluting the eyes. I do. I use it's called a blending gel. And I'll add that to my paint. And acrylic paint dries out so quick, and I do so crazy thing that I don't want it to dry out quite that quick. So I'll use that blending gel, a drop of that and a little drop of paint. Will kind of make that paint last a long. Now to get back to your question on your eye, no, I pretty much use that without watering it down. Because I don't want, now when I paint whether the blue or the making the green eyes, I'll make that thin, but I don't want it to run. And the only reason I make it thin is so I can blend the darker into the outside of it and a little bit of white into the inside. But yeah, your question is, no, I don't dilute that very much at all because I don't want it to run. So does that help you out a little bit?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that a lot of our wood carvers ask, and I just wanted to emphasize that. Also, their nostrils, the inside of the nostrils. Now, do you emphasize that at all or not?
Not really. I'll just, when I'm using the whatever shading I've decided to use across this area, I will make sure that's shaded in. But I don't really emphasize that. I don't, it'll kind of take care of itself, I think.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to show you an example of, you talked about eyes. This is one I did a while back. And it's hard to see. If you can see the judge, you can see what he's looking at. And then, of course, the gal, she really don't care about the judge. She's looking at her cell phone. And then the lawyer, he's looking over here. So if you look at this carving, your eyes are kind of going around, seeing where their eyes are at. So when you carve something, think about it. Think about what he's doing or what he's thinking about, or maybe how he's, whether he's taut or where, if he's taut, his eyes are saggy or something. If you have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish before you start, it's a little easier to finish it. And what look you're going for.
Wayne, those are beautiful pieces. Who makes that blending gel?
Looks like I'm gonna put my glasses on because I can't read without them. Folk art.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's just called blending gel.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
It just extends your paint a little more. Acrylic, it's not going to extend it a lot, but it will extend it a little better. And actually, it will make your paint slide on your carving a little better. One thing you'll find when you do linseed oil, sometimes the paint will want to slide off. Well, if you use a very watered down area and you put that on, it won't slide because you're not really putting much paint on it. You're putting more water on it.
The blending gel
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
While we're
Okay.
waiting there, Wayne, we've got a question in the chat there. You like matte or satin depth sealer, and why?
Pardon me?
The depth sealer that you use after you paint, do you like it
Yeah.
matte or satin, and why?
Okay, I use satin on most all of my carving stuff. Maybe a Santa Claus, I will use like a semi-gloss. It just, I don't like a lot of shine in my carvings, but on a Santa Claus, it's a little different. You want them to look, you know, shiny or happy or whatever. If you carve Santa Claus, don't make one unhappy, or you're gonna get to use it for a long time because you're never gonna get rid of it. You want him happy, you want him bright. But like on the Santa Claus, I still do not paint the face. I use the fresh tones of the linseed oil, but I just use a little more tomato spice, can make his face a little redder, make his nose a little redder. And by using that very watered down tomato spice, you may have to add 3 or 4 times. But if you add too much red to a face, you can't get it off. It's very hard to get paint off of a carving. So if you add a little bit at a time, you know, you can build it up a little easier.
So what other questions do we have for Wayne?
You said you use a Mod Podge on the eyes.
Yes.
How does that come? I haven't, I've heard of it years and years ago, but I have no idea how it comes or.
No, Pat, it's in that one box. I'm gonna show you, it only comes in like bigger containers, but you don't need, like I've had this one jar for 15 years.
Yeah, I think we used it in Boy Scouts for a
Yeah,
craft project, but I couldn't even remember if it comes in a container or a big jar. Or,
They make one in a jar about like this, by this. This thing here I've had probably 20 years, and I still haven't used the bottle cap full of it. And you don't need much on the eyes. Or like I will actually use on a belt buckle, or a gun, like I'm doing a cowboy, a gun, like a pistol, to make it shine. Anything you want to shine.
That's great. Thank you.
And when you put it on the eye, it'll look cloudy or almost white. It'll clear up. It'll kind of just be a shine. Now, other people have used fingernail polish, epoxy. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the Mod Podge is so much easier and not very messy, and you know, it's just easier to work with.
When you're doing your wash painting,
Mhm.
when you add a second coat, do you add more water or paint to it, or just?
Yes. I make sure that it's really watered down. You know, if you have a watered down base, you can just keep adding paint to your carving and not be overwhelmed and get it the wrong color. You can, I'll paint it once and I'll kind of let it dry. Now, acrylics dry so fast, but I'll kind of let it dry for it, then put another wet wash on it. And you can see the color starting to come into the wood. And remember, when you've done with painting and you sit it down, it will darken up. And when you spray death on it, it'll darken up. So if you look at something and say, man, I don't know if that's quite as dark as I want to get it, remember, it will darken up when it dries. So if you have any doubt, just wait till the next day. And if you need to add a little more to it, add a little more to it. It's easier to add to something than trying to figure out how to get it off of that. I've never had much luck doing that, getting it off.
Hey, Wayne, do you put any like Howard's Feed and Wax or anything on after you put the def on her?
No, I don't. I know a lot of guys do, and they really have some nice looking stuff. I don't. I just, when I'm done painting it, I'll let it dry just a little bit, just make sure the depth, like if you spray that depth on, your paint's wet, it'll kind of make it run a little bit. But just let it dry for half hour to an hour, and light coats of depth, a couple of them, and I'm done. Well, after I spray the depth on there and then let it dry, I'll sometimes take a paper towel and just wipe it off. I'm gonna use that paper like sandpaper, because depth will sometimes make a little rough edges on it. If you take a paper bag, it's a great sandpaper for that. I just use paper towel because that's what I have. And just wipe down your carving and it makes them a little smoother. Doesn't help the shine, doesn't help the color, it just makes them smoother.
I see here you got your caricatures up in the window there.
Yes.
Now, if a person paints a caricature or any other type of carving and puts it in a window where the sun shines, or even where the fluorescent lights shine on it, after a period of time, the paints will deteriorate. In other words, they'll lose their shine or something. And you
That's
talked
right.
about what type of thing do you, after you've got everything done, you mentioned the deft, but what do you put on there to keep it from fading after 15 years or so?
Well, and like a lot of these carvings I have up there, are just ones I'm working on or just done with. But you're right, you shouldn't put them any place where the sun beats down them. I'd like to tell you that the sun never shines in Southern Illinois, but sometimes it does. But yeah, I don't leave them in the window very long. These are ones that maybe, this is one of my projects. I love to do these. It just, you take a little block of wood. I got a whole box of these things. And that's how you get your idea how to make your cheeks red. Get different ideas. Like if I'm doing a carving, a lot of times I'll do a head like this before I do the carving. That way, when I get ready to do the carving, I know what head I want to put on it. And I know what kind of smile I put on it. Or a lot of times if I see somebody that is really kind of neat looking, I'll come home and I'll carve him. So that way, when I get ready to do a kind of a mean looking guy with a really bad overbite, I've got to go by for him. So these are just little pieces of box of wood that I use to make these heads in. This is a great, great thing to work on your caricatures. Because if you don't like them, you've got nothing invested in them. You can just throw them away. But I've got a whole box of these that I take when I teach, and people look at their eyes and kind of they can take them back to the table and work on them that way. So, but you're right. Don't put your carvings in where the sunlight's going to hit them that much, because it will, it's not good for them. Any other questions?
Do you usually use just 2x2 or 3x3 wood, basswood, or do you use other kinds of woods?
I basically use just basswood, and I think these are one. I have to measure them. I think these are about 1 1/4. I used to get these from Heineke. He'd have a whole box in there, and he had them already cut up. A lot of my figures that I use a 2.5 by 2.5. But in these little heads here, it's about 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. Because you can, whether you use a 2-inch piece or this size piece, whatever, the dimensions of your face is the same. You just expand it. The head is the same height as it is wide and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't matter what size block of wood you start with, as long as you use your proportions, it'll work out.
Wayne, what kind of brush do you use for your dry brushing?
Just hang on just a second. Let me hand me that. I got my gopher running out with it. She's running really quick. Okay, a lot of times, here's a good example of a dry brush. This brush here is wore out. You can see it. It's really bad. But that's a great, that's why I use for dry brushing, because it's pretty much wore out. You can't hurt it because it's pretty much almost shot. And that's why I use kind of a stiff brush. And I'll put a little paint in that and rub it out as much as I can. And then just kind of, not heavy handed, just kind of lightly hit it. Another question was what I usually paint the lines with. That side's right there. And then once you kind of get your paint in that, you can make a full stroke without running out of paint. Because if you run out of paint, you've got that where you've kind of got to catch up. And that's pretty hard to do.
Wayne, with that brush that you use for the lines, would that be considered one that is used for pinstriping cars?
No, pinstriping cars, the brushes are a little different. They're a little bigger at the top and come to a finer point. I don't think these will hold enough paint to maybe make that pinstripe, but I'm not a pinstriper, so I don't know. These are just regular acrylic paints. Let me see if I can find a number on them. All this says is the number 2. This is that little sharp one that I use a lot. It's a 18-0, whatever that means. But anyway, if you go to Hobby Lobby and just kind of go into the paint department, and a lot of them are double aught ones or some, just something that you feel comfortable in using, and maintain it, it'll last a long time. Another thing I like to do is when you carve things, kind of get an idea, you know, if you go carve things, you know, like if you don't know what a cowboy looks like or something like that, go to the internet. The internet's so great. Like I'm out here in the shop and I'm carving something and I want to think, well, wonder what that looks like. Boy, the internet, you can just get on the internet, look it up, and you got a great picture for it. But carve things you know, carve things you like, and carve for yourself. And you'll have a better looking product when you're done. For me, if somebody orders something, I don't mind doing it. I do a lot of it. But it's not as much fun as if you're doing something for yourself. So when I carve something for somebody else, I try to do it like it's for me. And that way, you know, I feel a little more comfortable in giving it to them.
Hey, Wayne.
Yes.
I just want to put out a couple of things here. I have one of your carvings here that I picked up out of Dayton. And there's a couple things on here I just wanted to point out to people that I've really liked about your carvings, and it might generate a little bit of conversation here. There's some details on this, and this is something that I've always liked about your carvings. You've got a strap for the overalls here coming down that's actually not connected to the fold. In the top of the hat, he's got a hole in his hat you can see the hair through. But what I've really liked, and it's just from looking at from different carvings, back here on the back where these straps come up, he puts creases in his shirts that go underneath the straps on the overalls, so that it's almost like when he does his details, there's carvings and layers here. That's something that I've always liked about your carvings when I've seen them at different shows, is you should just have an eye for that type of thing. Just thought I'd mention that, throw that out there, because some people they miss that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you very much. I do like, my wife is a great person to tell me to quit, because I get carried away with details. I like doing the little things that maybe kind of help things out. On this guy here, and it's hard, I know it's hard to see on there, but like he got a little gold chain. His thumb is in his pants. I don't know how many times you've been around a skateboard thing, but it seems like they all got their hands in the pants. And they're trying, like you can see that his underwear is right there at the top of his pants. When you're doing a carving, think about what that guy is. What do you, like this guy here, you know, he don't really care much about it. He's got a skateboard, he's got his fancy shoes, he's got tie-dye. This guy here's got a little, what do they call that, Red Bull? Yeah. Little Red Bull in his bag, he's got his watch on. But when you do a carving, think about it, just don't put pants on him. Just think about how the pants would hang, how the shoes would fit, where would his feet be, you know. You kind of got to think where he's doing. This guy here, you know, hopefully you can see I got to look like he doesn't really care. So when you do a carving, try to do it and try to think about what kind of carving you want. Even if you buy a rough out and you're doing somebody else's rough out, I guarantee you they won't mind it if you change it to put your personality in it. Because the whole idea that I would like to stress to everybody as a CCA member, go to classes, go to seminars, carve with other people, watch demos, whatever you want to do, but get your own style. Use a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When you look at my carvings, Phil Bishop, if you've ever carved with Phil Bishop or no Phil, you'll see a lot of my stuff in Phil's, because that's who I really thought was a great caricature carver. I got a lot of Chris Hammock in me because I like the way he carved. But I don't carve like Chris, but I got his idea. So go to seminars. Don't come home and say, well, I'm only going to carve that away. But you'll get ideas on how to carve. And that'll maybe help you kind of, if you're trying to get to that next step, or you're just trying to get started. There's nothing wrong with being self-taught, but it's always helpful to be around other people that carve. No matter who you carve with, you're going to get an idea. When I teach, I get ideas from my students because they do something a little different. You know, that's just, I don't want to get on the bandwagon here. But, that's what I like to stress to people. Carve your style. Carve what you like, paint the way you want, and try different things. Like you say, this guy here, little guy, it's a kind of throwaway. I painted the tie this way just to kind of see what that tie is going to look like. So when I get ready to do a carving, I say, okay, yeah, I like that idea. Anyway, any more questions?
Wayne, thank you so much for doing this class. I really appreciate it. It's been helpful. But now I got to ask one thing, a little off topic maybe, but are you actually wearing two different flannel shirts sewn together?
No, hey, this is my favorite shirt and everybody makes fun of it. But yeah, it's like 10 different things, and that way it doesn't make me look so fat.
Makes you look artistic. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, yeah. What do they say? Artistic something. Anyway, yeah, that's but I'm a little bit off center, so you know the shirt kind of fits my personality.
That's artistic. That's all.
Yeah, that's artistic.
You're creative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Wayne, can you tell us a little bit about where people can find your work? I know we talked earlier about website and stuff. Can you tell them about that?
Okay, I do. This is a great hobby, but I do have a website. It's Laramore'sWoodCarving.com. I've got a few rough outs on that. Of course, I have Facebook. If you have any questions you think about, message me or email me at WayneLaramore.yahoo.com. I'll answer any questions you try to. The great thing about wood carving, I've never seen a wood carver yet doesn't want to help somebody else. So that's my website, Wayne. It's Laramore'sWoodCarving.com. I do, right now, I've only got 3 seminars scheduled for next year. Hopefully I have more, but the pandemic is just crazy. I'm going to be in Pennsylvania in September. I'll be at the Renegade in October, and Converse in August. So that's my 3 scheduled ones. I usually do probably about 1 a month, and I do 1 here at my house. So if you're interested, give me a yell. I enjoy carving. That was so, you know, we didn't talk about CCA. To be in the CCA is a great honor. I just love it. There's so many great carvers in the CCA. It's unbelievable. And you get that book that they showed a while ago on they gave us a blank, we all carved something different. If you look at those, and you just got to wonder what they're thinking, because they're unbelievable. So, you know, that's what I try to do. I try to bring my carvings up to that level. I enjoy carving. I'm out here in my shop probably 4 to 6 hours a day, every day of the week. I retired in 14, and I'm out here all the time carving. If I'm not on the golf course, I'm in here. So, that's pretty much what I do, and I do enjoy it. So I think I just got shut off to it. So anyway, if you have any questions, give me a yell. I'll be happy to help you. Thank you, Blake. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Wayne, thank you so much. We really enjoy your work, and the book that he was referencing, we were talking about before the meeting, is this Thinking Inside the Rough Out. That was the last CCA book that they did. Wayne's got a project in here that he worked on. It's a great book, so if anybody's looking for a good project, go out and check that out. Wayne, again, thank you for presenting today. Thanks for all the information, some great tips there. Coming up on our meetings next week, we're going to have on Ricky Bartles from the Monona Carving Museum. He's going to be talking about carving wooden chains and talk about all the offerings and stuff that they have out in Monona, Iowa in this museum. So make sure you join us for that. The week after that, on January 22nd, John Overby is going to be on. He's going to be talking about flat plane carving. He's going to go through the process that he goes through to create some of his carving. So make sure you stay tuned for John's. And then on the 29th, we've got Sean Mullenbelt from 51 Bravo Knives. Sean makes some hand-carved or hand-forged carving knives. And he's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about that. We've had a couple of tool makers on before. Sean goes through a little different process in the way he makes his knife. So we're going to have him come on the 29th. And then we've got some other things lined up coming up in February that we'll talk about later. Some good presentations and some good demonstrations. So again, make sure you stay tuned for those. Again, thanks everybody who has donated and did the buy us a coffee, I guess is what you call it. Again, we'll provide the links for that, but that has allowed us to extend the number of guests that we can have on these live meetings. Today, I think we had 111 people, so you can see how it was necessary for us to upgrade. I think this is the 4th or 5th week in a row that we've had presentations where we've exceeded the 100-person limit. So again, thank you all for doing that. Make sure you go out and like and subscribe on our YouTube page, and join us next week at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have Ricky Bartles on at that point to talk about his wooden chain carving. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.